Okay, therefore, just as a customer passes the money to the bank, the legal effect raises, which is the transferring of the ownership to the bank in the same time, and the bank, by the turn, can act legally as the owner of the money deposited and exploit the money in any phase of economic or financial activity the bank see. In the same time, when the customer demands the bank to pay back the money, he demands back his money, not the money of the bank. This critical position was need legislative interference to solve the problem of keeping the legal situation of the parties to the contract valid. In the same time, when we give a cite to the legislator in the Article 301, we notice that the legislator concentrates on the property of the money. It says that the deposit is a contract to give the bank the power of owing the money of the deposited money. The legislator does not put a solution to the case the two parties does not provide in the contract on the device of property. Does the property of money pass to the depository bank? We can say that the passing of property of the money deposit became a real effect of the operations of deposit, not on concluding the contract of deposit. It means that the passing of the ownership became a real effect of the transferring the possession of the money to the bank. Consequently, the bank cannot claim the deposit, the money. Also, when the customer pays money into his account, the bank becomes debtor to the customer creditor. The money becomes the property of the bank, and the bank does not need, suppose, borrowing the money from its customer. The matter concerned turns around the decisive time of transferring the ownership of the money to the bank. The effect of passing the property to the bank results from the moment the money cashed to the bank. So, if the customer puts the sum of money cashier and the cashier picked up one bundle of notes and counted them, this amount only has been passed to the bank. If the rest of the uncounted cash has been lost for any reason and has not been passed to the bank, then the bank is not responsible for the rest of uncounted cash because it does not pass to the bank, and the money is still the property of the customer as the bank had not indicated its acceptance of it. So we can say that the bank's deposits are factually the amount that the bank owes to its customers. The bank is not an agent or a representative to the depositor. In this respect, when the people have brought some money to the bank, the latter may use them in any way it wishes because the legislator supposes that the bank is the owner of the money. The legislator supposes that the bank is the owner of the money. Then the bank is free to do what it likes with the money and is not bound to account to its customer for what it does with it. The bank is merely liable to repay the money to the customer when he demands it. In the same time, if the bank fails to repay on demand, the customer claim insolvency. Customer claim insolvency. The bank, or he can make a clear if he owes a debt to the bank on another account which exceeds his credit balance. His loss may be nil. The obligation to repay the money. That is the second obligation on the bank. The obligation to repay the money. When the bank receives the money from the customer, the bank thereupon indebted to his customer for an equivalent sum. The banker's duty is to repay the money or any part of it upon demand being made by the customer at the branch of the bank when the account is kept, or any other branch of the bank, and during business hours. Otherwise, the bank breaches his obligation of pay. Attendance in juris says that the banker must pay the sum of deposit in legal form after the bank's advertised closing time or after a stated period of notice. The customer does not have any cause of action against the bank in respect of money on deposit until notice has been given and prescribed the period of notice is expired. The third obligation on the bank, pay the rate of return. When the bank concluded the contract of money deposit, the banker undertakes upon himself two important obligations toward the depositor. An obligation to return the deposit on demand by the customers according to the terms of deposit. Second, an obligation to pay the rate of return on deposit at prescribed rates. Then we noted that the bank pays to the depositor for deposit. It is the specific nature of this contract that the bank pays for the deposit, on the contrary of the general rules, which decide that the bank obtains from his service the charge and the commission from the from the customer. In case of fixed deposit, the rate of return is high, but the amount cannot be withdrawn by the customers before the date of maturity. The banker undertakes on himself to pay the rate of return and add it to the deposited money. Needless demand from the customer or notifying from the bank to the customer. If the banker does not pay the rate of return, he will be breached his obligation and will be compensated, because the customers can request a full explanation of how interest is calculated, and the summary of interest rates must be sent to all customers at least annually. Modify the fourth obligations, modify the conditions of deposit. That is the fourth effect. The bank can modify the conditions of deposit, but this ability of make modification is reigned by a very important consideration, which is modification does not against the interest of the customer of lost his right in the deposited money. The modification may include a kind of restrict in prepaying the deposit of earning a new process to ensure the paying of deposit in a more safe way. There is an obligation on the bank, which is the notifying all the customers of the bank of the new or added conditions. The modification has not a retroactive effect, but it must be in a direct effect from the next day of issuing the new procedures. Certain important matter flows from the principle that the bank can make modification that any express term term which seeks to exclude liability on the part of one party to a contract may be rendered void because it will be an exclusion of liability to Article 147 of the Civil Code. Therefore, the bank should tell customers how any variation of the terms will be notified, and a notice of variation must be given. وشكرا.